All right, greetings, planet Earth. Welcome to all my humans, and you are now tapped into the System Disruptors podcast, crucial conversations for radical educators. I'm your guy, Hernani Santos, aka the Game Orchestrator. I got uh my comrade alongside of me, Dr. Kiana O'Leary. What's up, sis?
Hey, everyone. Happy to be here and happy to be with you, comrade.
There you go. Now,
Never heard that
unfortunately,
one before.
unfortunately, our other partner in crime emails, we will miss them, but you know what they say, the show must go on. Are you ready? All right, we got something dope cooking tonight. All right. Our guest for this evening is our keynote speaker for the 2024 Equity Ingenuity Conference, Dr. Tara J. Yoso. Let's make some noise, y'all. Woo! Dr. Yoso, how you doing tonight?
I am very happy to be with you all. Very we had a little surprise rain here on the West Coast yesterday, and today it's just been blue skies. So that's how I'm
Hmm.
feeling about being with y'all.
There you go. There you go. Now, you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't go through your bio for the viewers because, you know, you are phenomenal. All right, so I'm going to read this, okay? Dr. Tara J. Yoso is a first generation college student and professor in the Graduate School of Education at the University of California, Riverside. Dr. Yoso's research and teaching applied to the frameworks of critical race theory and critical media literacy to examine educational access and opportunity. She takes a collaborative, intersegmental, and transdisciplinary approach to studying the ways communities of color have historically utilized an array of cultural knowledge, skills, abilities, and networks to navigate structures of racial discrimination in pursuit of educational equality. And to sum it all up, you just all that in a bag of chips.
Uh,
Or maybe a bowl of grits, if you will. All that in a bowl of grits, if you will. So you know, for those for those tuning in for the first time, possibly, or maybe have caught, you know, just a few episodes, the format of our podcast has changed slightly from last season. What we're gonna do is we're gonna partake in a rapid fire topic discussion. Everyone will have a certain amount of time. I got my trusty timekeeper who always keeps us on point because you know, especially when IJ is online, you know, we like to run our mouths. So she gotta keep a tight leash on us, right, sis?
Yes. Can you all see the timer? You guys can see it to the right. You see the timer?
No timer yet.
Okay. You'll see it, hopefully.
It's all good. I know you're gonna keep us on point, all right? But again, you know, I'm excited, and I know we're gonna speak about it a little bit later, but I'm excited to have you on this year's conference. You know, I know you're gonna bring that fire for them, that hot lava. So you know, everyone tuning in, just stay tuned because we're gonna announce all of that is coming up this weekend, Saturday, right, sis?
Yes,
Yeah,
Saturday, March
it's
23rd, 2024. You still can get your tickets. If you haven't done it, do so now. We want to save your virtual space.
that's right, that's right. All right, y'all ready for tonight?
Let's go.
All right, rapid fire discussion questions. Number one, how does critical race theory make education fairer for everyone? And we got the resident expert in the house.
Resident expert, we'll let you go first. Go ahead. Drop it to us first, and then we'll all jump in right after you.
Drop some gems on us.
so I would only rephrase this by suggesting that how can critical race theory make it fairer for everyone in terms of education. And so for me, I always want to make sure that we're on the same page. There are about 5 tenets that we in education have brought forward from the law in critical race theory, which started as a movement in the 1970s. And so when we think about that understanding of centrality of racism at its intersections with other forms of subordination. So approaching education, understanding that racism is a central role that it plays in shaping our educational experiences, and that happens at the intersections of multiple forms of subordination, and that we're doing that with a recognition that our goal is to challenge dominant ideology or any forms of ways in which that discrimination is justified through structures and practices, and then the discourse that we make up to do that. And we do so listening to the experiences of people of color as valid and valuable. We have an unapologetic approach to doing our work, emphasizing social justice, and we do so in that more transdisciplinary fashion that brings a sense of history. And when you do all of those things, as you're approaching education, you're looking for those structures of inequality, and you're understanding the ways racism has historically shaped the systems that we're in, and you're listening to the experiences of students of color, and you're doing so with a goal of affecting change for everyone in a more positive way. That's how it can make education fairer for everyone.
I mean, how do I come behind that? I would just say I remember one word that kind of strikes me, and it's this idea of color blindness, right? And in this colorblind, oftentimes I would hear people saying, like, I don't see color. Like, I don't see color when I see people. I don't see color when I see systems. I don't see color when I see environment. And to have that posture, it perpetuates this idea of systemic barriers that have prohibited other people from advancing in life. And so, of course, for me, it was really being able to name the very thing that I was feeling as a student, the very thing that I was feeling as an educator, the very thing that I was feeling as an administrator. Once I was able to name it and give light to it, then I was able to kind of lead through as a social justice educator to unravel or begin to unpack the layers so that we can advance change. And I think once we start naming things, calling it out specifically, then we can be able to start doing some of that work that really suggests that we are tackling the inequalities that our young people are experiencing in these systems.
I'm just going to piggyback on that. It was just recently, a few weeks ago, and I forgot what NFL team it was, but it was, and I want to say the Raiders. I want to say, and I think the general manager made the comment like he doesn't see color, and exactly what you said. But the new head coach came in, African American gentleman came in and said, by saying you don't see color, you're perpetuating what's really going on instead of having these tough conversations, right? And so I agree 100%. Also, I think it makes it fairer because knowledge is power, right? And sometimes you hear about unconscious biases, or sometimes it is conscious. But we just went through. I'm at Elite Public Schools in Vallejo Charter School, and we just went through getting our last yes vote from the Vallejo Planning Commission, and I mean, you would have thought we were back in the '60s with some of the opposing comments that were being made. And racism was live and direct. It was on display. There was a dance studio, and she went from Black to African American students to colored. She actually used the term colored, and I just really think like the knowledge needs to be out there, because that's the only way we start to make any type of movement or any type of traction to deal with these inequities, these inequalities. And if we're colorblind and act like they don't exist, that only benefits one particular demographic of people. So, I think it's necessary, and that's how it will help make the system fairer. You know what I mean? So, based on the question.
That is time. Does anyone want to put a bow tie on that comment before we get to the next one?
Resident expert?
I appreciate you making it concrete, Hernandi. I think that those specific examples, I think that what we need to approach then what does a color conscious,
Mm,
gender conscious, class conscious, right? Looking at that intersections, what does that look like? Because we're very trained to look to understand what is wrong, but how do we shift it? What does it actually
mm,
look like to
mm,
be color conscious?
mm, 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 mm. I love that. How do we shift it? Because oftentimes we can name it, name it, name it, name it. We can even, pinpoint the root, but we're not digging up. We don't have our
Mm.
sleeves on, or we're not digging up those roots so that we could replant um, a new harvest in better soil.
That's right. That's right. All right, y'all ready for the next one?
Let's go.
Let's do it. Number two. How does what we see and hear in media affect how we learn?
Woo! I'll start with that one. I am right before this call, I mentor a young lady who's in the 8th grade, and I noticed that most of her identity stems from what she sees in social media, right? And um, I think it's important that we as adults are responsible for the content that we display so that our youth doesn't absorb it and own it as truth. And so I'm always trying to help her decipher credibility, decipher um, um, who she wants to be in the future, and so um what images or what things she see that's going to support that future that she envisions for herself, and what are some of those things that she needs to omit or remove from her lens so that it doesn't impact her future self. But I think that is so challenging because different from when we were growing up and being reared, we didn't have to combat with so much of the information, good, bad, truth, untruth, that our young people are faced with today. So it I feel like every time we go 10 steps forward, then there are some barriers that push us back.
So a whole line of my work looks at critical race media literacy. And like I mentioned, we are very trained to look at what is wrong, but we do not train ourselves to create another way of seeing. And so I think the first step is that we need really that critical race media literacy early and ongoing. So for those educators out there who are looking at different lesson plans and how do we integrate this at every level, there is a barrage of, it's not just what we are seeing, but what we are not seeing. And so when we're teaching our children about what it means to be their full self, and when they're seeing images that are distortions, it becomes very confusing for them. So to understand that every image is a construction created to represent something or someone and to sell something or someone. So what is it that they are trying to get you to buy? Having them understand what the images are created for and who they are created by, and how they then can be empowered to create images that can imagine who they are in time and space in relation to one another. We are all being racialized in relation to one another. And someone is very much benefiting from us not being critical of what we see and how we are integrating that into it. Definitely the work of Chester Pierce for me, in his early work on racial microaggressions, is super informative to help us understand. And his idea was that we need street therapists to make sure that we can recognize and figure out how to, and whether to, and when to even engage on this ongoing assault that we are facing in these everyday ways. And so my dissertation looked at visual microaggressions, the ways in which these racialized assaults are occurring as mundane, everyday, subtle, and stunning ways that we are normalizing that racism and internalizing it.
Yeah, that's well, that's some lava right there, sis. Street therapist. And you know, I'm still at the site, and you know, I see, you know, some of the interactions of the young people, and I'm thinking primarily the young ladies. And I agree with you 100%. Like the type of things that's allowed to be on TV, the type of things that the young people identify with, it just gets perpetuated when like stuff like that shouldn't even be allowed to be on TV, right? Like you put something like you know, Love and Hip Hop or The Real Housewives of Anywhere, and it just really puts on a display of certain behaviors where that's not true for, you know, for the masses. A lot of the stuff is written just to perpetuate the stereotype, and you know, it's just unregulated. And then when I think about um, you know, things that are allowed to just be online. You know, some of the things are untruth, like you said, Dr. O'Leary, that's just allowed to be perpetuated and kids internalize it. And they think that's how it's supposed to be, or they think that they're identifying with those people because they look like them, when that in reality, you know, that doesn't really represent, you know, any one culture as a whole, right? It's just what's being allowed to be showed for entertainment. Could be some propaganda. You know, at the end of the day, just follow the dollar, right? You know what I mean? Like they're, you know, people are going to make money no matter how it's going to impact people. I will also say, just from a different lens, affecting how we learn, or young people learn, or you know, just I'm just thinking about like attention span. You know, having stamina to be able to learn something that's really concrete. I just think about the way my own kids listen to music. You know, I let them get control of the music in the car, and I'm literally listening to 30 seconds of a song, and then boom, they're off to the next song, just because of the, you know, how media is so like choppy. Couple seconds here, boom, you're moving on. And I just think that also, you know, that kind of takes away from the stamina of focusing and paying attention, in addition to everything that, you know, you guys both have talked about.
Any final thoughts?
Yeah, just to put a bow on that, I mean, really, the idea is that we are not using our left brain enough. So if we are not happy with the images that are out there, or the lack of images that are showing our communities in all of their humanity, what are we doing as educators to help prepare students to not just deconstruct those images, but also to construct images, so that we can be creating the next generation of filmmakers and of media producers, and of those who will pass the laws that will regulate on some of this other, right? This precious knowledge. And so I think that those are the things that I think about, when how are we exercising that creative side, because that is super important form of, which gets to that next question of storytelling.
And I'll add a bow as well, real quick. When you talk about that left brain, when you talk about that critical consciousness, that's why it has so much power, which is why there is legislation that is trying to stop it at all costs. And we know, particularly in two states, one that I reside in, where there has been effective January of this year, there's legislation at the collegiate level where any institutions of higher ed are prohibited from having conversations and teaching CRT and focusing on DEI initiatives, or their funding will be removed from them, right? And so they understand the power of using that left brain, and they understand the power of igniting a generation that will change the narratives by being the creatives that would stimulate a different story for themselves and their peers. And so if they could stop it through legislation, I always say, if you want to trace systems of oppression, look at legislation, because legislation tells the tea, right? And so this legislation is very crafty in understanding the power of voice when that left brain critically examines how these stories can be told and how they could look to create a generation of change.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when historically when people talk about history classes and why it's important, right? You always hear the cliche like if you don't understand, certain things, history could repeat itself. But in this instance, folks want to erase history, act as if it didn't ever happen, right? And so it's an elaborate plot. Like if that's what it is, then let's talk about all the history, right? The good, the bad, the ugly. You know what I mean? Like let's not try to pretend like it never happened, you know?
I think that's like goes smoothly in our next topic. So give us the next topic. I'm ready.
Let's go. What stories can change the way we think about education and race?
Hernandi, can you start us off?
Let me think. Well, hmm. Come back to me. Let me just ponder on this momentarily.
I'll actually jump in and say, really, Santos, is stories like yours, like your story of of how you grew up, what you've overcome, what you're passionate about, who you impact, why you wake up every day, being a man of faith, being a man of family, being a man of community. I think it's those stories. I think those stories that when we share them and people see themselves in you, it gives hope. And to me, hope perpetuates inspiration. And when someone's truly inspired, is no mountain that can't be moving in their journey. And so I think that when we really get a chance to see the real humanity in each other, like those are the stories that I feel that go unspoken or unshared. And when we do share them, I do see that there's great power in them.
Mm, mm.
What are your thoughts, Yoso?
I think that Richard Delgado talks about the indigenous and ways of storytelling, of passing on knowledge that are across and every people across time and place have known that storytelling is essential to their survival. And this runs in contradiction to if anyone knows a good story, it's complicated. It's not always neat. Some people have a very complicated story because we all have complicated stories and we have contradictions that we live and we kind of need to back up and then there's also how the ways that we interpret those stories. So I think that stories can change the way we think about education and race because they help us understand that it is complicated, that there have been people who have struggled to make sure that education does not continue to oppress, that it can be a site of empowerment and liberation. And why are people fighting so hard that we don't get to hear their story of struggle? And this tells you that that story is powerful. That story can change the way that you see yourself as being a problem in education or seeing that the structures are the problem. It can shift the entire focus of where our attention is to try to, quote, fix the problem. Are we trying to fix the student or are we trying to fix that structure? And so the more particular that we can get about telling that story in all of its complexity, the more powerful that story is.
Yeah, you guys both got me to think, and I think this is kind of in line with your last comments, but I also think uh the stories, for example, like last night, when we went to the planning commission for the final yes vote on our new high school campus downtown. I think stories like that, right, where we're still having to fight in 2024 for people to see our kids, our babies, our black and brown babies like we see them, right? And where there's still narratives being perpetuated. And I think it's important for the kids to hear the stories of the struggle, as you were saying, and hear about like the actions that were taken in order to combat that, because what mainstream would like to have is for us to be lulled to sleep with the media, um and not be cognizant of what's still actually happening. It might not be completely overt, but it's still there, and sometimes it is. Sometimes it's right there in your face, and then sometimes it's a 007 mission, like, on the under. So I just think, so everyone's conscious that those stories actually need to be shared as well. Well, we on point tonight, huh? Who want to put a bow on that?
Right? We are on point. We were talking before you jumped online, and we were just saying how, like, it's these conversations that fuel my soul. Like when I'm depleted, and warring with the system, or um just, they always say, like, you need someone to, like, raise your hands, raise that banner up to continue to fight in social
Yes.
justice, liberation, and education. And sometimes it gets weary. I try to tell people it's called social justice warrior because you're going to war. You're combating against forces that do not want success, opportunities, um, for all people. And when you are combating against, those oppositional forces, it can get tiring at times. It can attempt to defeat you while it's trying to deplete you. But it's when we have these conversations, these crucial conversations, for radical educators like us here on this line and those who are viewing, I feel like recharged. I feel like I just got my battery recharged. So even in just the few 29 minutes that we've been jamming with each other, I feel a level of inspiration as I walk away. And so that's really what this is about, is to um, recharge ourselves, but also allow that to be contagious across the waves of viewers who are tapped in.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, going back to, like, it just hit me, like a ton of bricks when I thought about the meeting last night. I had at least five, anywhere between 5 and 10 students, and even students that went there. And at my school, it's TK all the way through 12th grade. So I had some elementary students, some middle school scholars, high school scholars, approaching me today, asking, like, why would those white people say that about us? Why did they get up there and try to um, make us look like animals or monsters, or whatever the term. And when the elementary student asked me that question, like, why don't they like me? Oh man, it broke my heart. It broke my heart. But again, it's important for us to always, to stay on our toes, right? Like, we want our young people to be aware of those things that are out there, so they can be better prepared, so they can in the future become the social justice warriors, because the injustice still exists. But yeah, it was heartbreaking today to hear the young people ask me those questions, almost like, what did I ever do to them? You know what I mean? Uh, so it was powerful, and I mean, the timing of this conversation is impeccable, because we literally and we got the yes vote, so the
Ooh.
planning commission, yeah, the plan. So we're gonna have a new high school campus downtown. But when you hear all the public speaking, right, people who came there just to oppose the movement, or the minority in the planning commission, like, it's heartbreaking that you guys are dehumanizing my babies. That's crazy to me. So yeah, the stories are important, right? So everyone can just have that at the forefront and not be blind to the fact, right?
But we are on to the next part, and I feel like I get front row seats, Santos. We kind of we everybody else can get a little jealous, but you don't have to be jealous because all you have to do is register and get your ticket, and you'll be there on
That's
Saturday,
it.
the real nuggets. But we are going to give our friend, some time to just give a little appetizer, just a little something, to get them excited. She's gonna drop some knowledge and share with us just a little bit of what she plans to share with us on Saturday. So, without any further ado, take it away.
So remind me of how, are you gonna put timer on me?
No, you have no timer. Do you want a
No
timer?
timer, no timer.
Yeah, but give me a timer just in case, so I know what I will keep you here. No, I think that what I just really appreciate being in conversation with you all. And this I had shared with Dr. O'Leary that this really came at an important time for me, this crossing of our paths. And I do believe that I told her so much that I appreciate the concept of woven itself, the ways in which our histories are very much woven together. And so with Ernani sharing with us this idea of having to fight over, advocate for, keep a struggle going for a school. Every school has a history. Every curriculum has a history. Everyone in that classroom has a history that they brought with them. And so what I wanted to share with you and what I will share with you for Saturday is a little bit about how those stories of struggle are connected, and looking as what I believe. I know he used a lot of really big and complicated words at the very beginning, and I always feel like, I'm an academic and I'm able to converse with multiple audiences, and then I use these huge words that I'm like, I don't even know that I fully understand some of these words. But this idea that of understanding intersegmental, like that each of the systems that we are in, the preschool impacts kindergarten, right? And that kindergarten through the TK through sixth grade or through fifth grade, whatever your particular system is, that shapes the experiences at the middle school level. And those experiences shape the high school level. And we at the higher education level cannot not understand that intersegmental conversation. And it needs to be historically grounded. This idea that we are interconnected in our systems also needs to be historically grounded, so that when we're using terms like affirmative action, we really understand that that is desegregation. At K through 12, we talk about desegregation, and higher education, we talk about affirmative action, right? And so, but if we are separated from our histories, we don't understand. That's taken out of context. And so these are some of the ideas for me that come also through that idea of being transdisciplinary, right? Of looking not just within one discipline, but looking to kind of break that down. So when you are teaching something in social studies, it is obviously, as you know, connected to what you're doing in ELA, and that there are mathematical constructs of the ways in which they make these decisions budget wise of who gets what resources, right? These are all interconnected, and so too our training needs to be, so that students are able to see the application, that these are all different ways in which they can have this knowledge that we all know is co-constructed be applicable. So this is really an idea that these kind of that we are connected across time and place in this concept of being woven, that we are able to use these bigger concepts of and break them down in everyday ways of how we are kept in silos and made to feel that we are completely distinct from each other. And so we found in the archives, for those of you who are history nerds, this is like a Nerds Unite moment, because once you go into those archives, you do not want to get out. And so this reminder of this fight over a school just reminded me that what I want to share on Saturday is about two struggles and how they are interconnected despite being on different coasts and being decades apart. And how you see a continuity in the struggle for equality of educational opportunity. So we use a lot of buzzwords, as I already mentioned a few of those. But this concept of equity, why do we use the concept of equity, and why, and how is it different from equality of opportunity? And what are the continuities of the struggle that we really have to make sure that our kids have access to education? And so I'm going to be talking a little bit about a struggle for desegregation that happened in Washington, D.C., and a struggle that happened for desegregation that happened in Oxnard, California. And again, two different coasts, two different time periods. And what are the continuities across those two, and how they help us understand that, very similar to what Dr. O'Leary mentioned, that this idea that we need to completely unroot the continuity is racism that connects folks, but the continuity is also that struggle, and that struggle begins with families who identify something unfair happening in education and decide to take a stand against it. And so when we're thinking about legislation, it feels very overwhelming and completely disempowering, like we have no control, because those are the people who are supposed to be representing us. They're misrepresenting us. And so this, for me, is a reminder about how change actually does happen. When you go into those archives and you read those stories of the voices that did not get mentioned in the legislation even, but whose struggle inspired that change, and who those lawyers carried those stories forward, and how and who they're representing when they're making those arguments. And so recovering the complexity of their stories, and some of these stories remain incomplete, just like the struggle is ongoing and remains incomplete. But how can we feel more like we do not need to be reinventing the wheel every single time we are starting something, right? We are connected across time and place. What can we learn from the struggles decades prior to us in places that are distinct from what the specific, but what is the continuity? What do we share in terms of this common cause for equality of educational opportunity? And so that's the story that I'll be telling us a little bit about, to help us recenter this idea of, for me, we are definitely woven together, and we are woven together by struggle. And that struggle begins with these aspirations that we have, these dreams and hopes that we have, that our children, that our families, that our kin, that our students, that our communities will not have to struggle as much as the previous generation, or as much as we had to struggle. And in that effort, in that change, in expressing those aspirations with the work, the everyday work that we do, with the organizing that happens, sometimes we see that our lives are spent and our struggle continues, as is evident in some of the work of our civil rights leaders, whose work they laid that architecture for, and they did not get to see that complete building, right? But that does not, for me, discount in any way, shape, or form that struggle. And I think that for me right now, that is hopefully what the message that you all carry forward from Saturday is, the ways in which we build on those struggles, the ways in which there's an urgency to preserve those histories, to recover those histories, so that we can, as Hernandi says, history will repeat itself. That is, we are still living our past. The past is always present. And so how can we see that as a strength and learn and build on those struggles, not just so that their struggles will not have been in vain, but also because they were amazing and fierce and were moving in horrific circumstances to create. And so we have been sometimes misled to the idea that, oh, well, we didn't get that grant and it just won't be possible this year, right? And so I know many of you are already working in really difficult circumstances with or without that grant, right? And so kind of thinking about what strategies are we pulling forward? How are we listening to those struggles and aspirations and hopes and dreams of families? And how are we continuing that struggle in the work that we do? And so that's what I'll be sharing on Saturday to hopefully reinvigorate those of you who need a little pep in the step. But also for me, it's humbling and overwhelming to learn about the amazing ways that our elders and their elders were moving across time and place. And so what my hope would also be in the more concrete ways is that you would be able to take pieces and parts of that story and think about how your classes might be able to engage in similar projects of historical recovery, so that you're thinking about the ways that at any level of education, they might recover these ideas of how we are connected across time and place, because that truly is the larger project of what all of this anti-CRT and anti-DEI and all of these concerns that are suddenly being raised, right? That Ted Cruz is quoting my work. This at least he had proper citation, but the ways, why is it that we are seen as a threat, and how might we make sure that students know their full power and potential does not lie with them as individuals, but lies with those who came before us, to make sure that we would have this equality of educational opportunity. And so to think about ways that you might implement these types of projects with your students, because the ways that when people see themselves as connected and as historically grounded, that sense, that right to that building, that when you're getting up there to speak and someone is in your face, and because racism is illogical and it's really hard to explain. The younger that the child is, the more illogical they point out to you this is, right? They know the truth. And we have learned a lot of big words to try to make people less uncomfortable as we're trying to move in these places and spaces. And so the more that we see how direct folks were in what they were asking for, and how clear their vision and purpose was, and how obvious it was, especially coming out of World War II, for example, this idea that we are fighting tyranny and totalitarianism. We cannot repeat those hierarchies here. We need to be dedicated to pluralism, that I value you as another person and what you bring to this place. And that is reflective in the types of institutions and in the very small classroom space and in the entirety of that classroom. I value you as an entire person and what you bring in all of your humanity. And I can't have that if we're having a completely segregated system. And so I'll be kind of pushing some of these ideas in terms of what happens in a segregated space and what happens in a space that we presume is undereducating students. Just because you're in a hyper segregated space, such as many of us educate in right now, does not mean that that is a space that is not educating students. So how are we working within the confines that we have in order to affect change? And I'll look forward to seeing you all there.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, go ahead and drop that mic.
And drop the mic. If that is not the perfect teaser, because now I'm like, I got to get to know what these two stories are. I want to know how we're the space, how we're different in the space. What are the similarities? And I know what the basis of the similarities are. But I am just super excited and delighted to be honored, humbly honored, to have you join us in this movement and to drop some jewels that will ignite, that will inspire, and hopefully, like you said, push people towards supporting their students uncover, recover these stories, right? And then build off of the shoulders of the legacy that they learn about. I think that is so key and so dynamic, and it's so powerful once our students have access to their past histories, right? It reminds me of, and I love this show, and I love it for various reasons, but I like Abbott Elementary. And if people don't like it, it's okay if you don't like me, because I like it, but I like it. And in one of the last episodes, there was this discovery of their school being the first school in Philadelphia. It's a fictitious school, but the first school in Philadelphia that had teachers of color. And they were trying to figure out what was so important about their school. But once they taught the kids that history, after a few teachers had looked in the archives of the school, they were able to honor the legacy of that particular school and build off of that legacy. And so it was just kind of mirroring a little bit of what you had talked about in this kind of fictional visual narrative, but it's so applicable if people want an actual, show that kind of supports some of the themes that you're going to be addressing on Saturday. What are your thoughts, Santos? I'm ready. Woo,
Yeah,
I'm ready.
I can't wait. I can't wait. I would also say this, like, and for everybody out there that's watching, invite somebody, right? Because, oftentimes when we're going to conferences and things like that, sometimes it's a good majority of people that show up that are already like-minded and are there for, for the push, which is going to be dope. But, if you're out there, invite somebody that may not already be there and just needs to be enlightened. Because I think, the things that Dr. Yoso is speaking on is very enlightening, especially for those who don't have any understanding, of critical race theory, things of that nature. Like, and I can't wait for it, but also I can't wait for, like, when we continue to push out content, right? Because it's the conversation is important, and especially for those people that are colorblind. I don't see color, right? Who may not be at the conference for whatever reason. Like, those are the people we need to strive to reach as well, because we have to enlighten, we have to open eyes, we have to broaden thinking, because that's the only way we're going to begin to have impact. Like, you and I will be there, sis, right? But we're already social justice warriors. We're already equity warriors, but I don't know as much as Dr. Yoso, so I'm excited. Like, I want to level up, But there are some people that are just, like, so far off the mark that, I really wish that, those people could be intended. So you're out there and somebody, bring a +1, bring a +2, bring a +3, the guest list is expanding. Bring all those people, so we can be just a small piece of the change. You feel me?
Yes, 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 yes. Super excited. We only have maybe 1 or 2 more minutes before we wrap up. Any final thoughts, final parting words Anything that you want to share with the people? We want to give you a little bit of time to talk to the folks before we say our goodbyes. Anyone else want to shout anything else out? I have
I just want
something.
to say thank you to everyone. I know that it's probably the end of a really long day for many of you, and that day is not over when you get off of this call. So I really appreciate your work that you're doing. And if I don't get a chance to repeat that on Saturday, I just want to say thank you. We are made to feel that our work is very small in the classroom, and it is not. You are literally what is helping create, contribute to the next generation, of preparing and training the next generation of those informed citizens who will be participating in what we all are praying will be a functioning democracy. And that's a heavy lift. And so thank you for doing that work.
Santos, what you got? Any parting words? Well, congratulations again on the yes.
On the
Hello.
yes. On
That's
the yes.
amazing. That's really awesome.
Yes. Yes.
And give
we're
Bishop our love as well.
Yes, and the fight been 2 years. You know what I mean? Because we had to go through CEQA studies, traffic studies. We had to do all of this before getting to the planning commission. So it's actually been a long time coming. When the high school is, the construction is done, like people might not even realize how long it took for us to get in the space with you, Dr. Yoso, and then everything that you're going to be bringing to the table on Saturday. And it's going to be, obviously it's going to be phenomenal, but it's going to be necessary. And I'll leave the folks with that, because without arming folks with this knowledge, like, things will get perpetuated, right? Going back to the old cliche, knowledge is power. And, I can't emphasize this enough, because you have some people in some systems who actually really want to do the right thing, but they're totally ignorant, or oblivious to some things, or sometimes, people are uncomfortable with having these difficult discussions. But it's important, right? Because, I mean, for example, say you have somebody in the audience, or a few people in the audience who, may work at a parochial school, right? In a private school. Arming those scholars with this knowledge is just as important, right? Because then those people or those students will go on and join in helping to make things a lot more equitable in the future. But, folks don't know what they don't know. Like, if you're never challenged in that way, then you're gonna continue with your stinking thinking. You feel me? So I'm ready to go, sis, for real.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I'm taking over your part. You the host. Go ahead and take back over. What are we doing next?
well, listen. I enjoyed myself immensely tonight. I mean, I think you were able, Dr. Yoso, to really summarize without giving the folks too much, but giving them just enough to know that Saturday is going to be powerful. You do not want to miss it. We want to thank everybody for tuning in on this podcast episode of the Systems Disruptors, Crucial Conversations for Radical Educators. If you have not got your ticket to this virtual experience, make sure you do so right after we close out. With that being said, I'm thankful for this evening, and like I always say, we out of here like last year.